I sat across the mahogany conference table, a table I had picked out myself 10 years ago at an estate sale, and waited for my son to look at me. Just one glance. That was all I was asking for. But Gabriel wouldn't do it. He stared intensely at his fingernails, refusing to meet the eyes of the woman who had raised him, fed him, and built this business for him. Beside him, his wife, Sonia, was doing enough looking for both of them. She was smiling. It wasn't a warm smile. It was that tight, practiced smile people, where when they are about to give you terrible news, but want to pretend they are doing you a favor. Renee, Sonia started, her voice sickeningly sweet. She folded her hands on top of a blue folder. We are so glad we could finally sit down. We've been crunching the numbers all quarter, and Gabriel and I have been doing a lot of thinking about the future. I nodded slowly. I wasn't nervous. Why would I be? I was 68 years old. I had spent the last 15 years of my life pouring my blood, sweat, and savings into GNS hardware. When we started, it was a dusty garage with 3 aisles of inventory. Now, it was a premier supplier in Cleveland. I was the one who managed the books, negotiated with the vendors, and handled the tax compliance. I was the first one in at 6 a.m. and the last one to lock up at 8 p.m. Today was supposed to be the day. For 3 years, Gabriel had promised me that once we hit the $2 million revenue mark, I would officially be made a partner. Not just Gabriel's mom who helps out, but a legal owner. We had hit that number last month. I adjusted my glasses, expecting to see partnership papers slide across the table. I've been thinking about the future too, I said, my voice steady. The new vendor contracts are ready for review, and I have some ideas about the upcoming fiscal year. Sonia let out a short, sharp laugh, cutting me off. She glanced at Gabriel, urging him to speak, but he just shrank further into his chair. That's actually what we need to talk about, Sonia said, leaning forward. The future. You see, Renee, business is changing. It's moving fast. Digital footprints, automated inventory, AI-driven customer service. It's a young person's game now. My stomach tightened. I knew that tone. It was the tone one uses with a child or a senile relative. I managed the inventory system just fine, Sonia, I said. I built the system. Exactly, she countered, her smile never fading. You built it. Years ago. It's quaint. But Gabriel, and I feel that the business needs a fresh direction. A modern direction. We want to rebrand. We want to bring in a new energy that aligns with the current market. She paused for effect, then dropped the hammer. We feel that your methods are a bit old-fashioned. Emotional. You hold on to customers who don't pay on time because you know their families. You refuse to automate the payroll because you like to double-check the hours. It's slow, Renee, and we can't afford slow anymore. I looked at Gabriel. Is that what you think? That I'm slow? He finally looked up, his face red. Mom, it's not that. It's just, Sonia has this vision for a streamlined corporate structure, and we think maybe it's time you took a break. You're 68. You should be resting. You should be gardening. I hate gardening, I said flatly. I love this business. Sonia slid the blue folder across the table. It wasn't partnership papers. We've prepared a very generous severance package. Sonia said, 6 months of pay. And, of course, a heartfelt thank you for your assistance over the years. But, effective immediately, we are terminating your employment. We've already hired a new operations manager. He starts Monday. He's 28. Very sharp, straight out of business school. Terminating. The word hung in the air like smoke. After 15 years. After I refinanced my own home to save this company during the recession. After I forgave Gabriel's loans when he made bad bets. They weren't making me a partner. They were putting me out to pasture. I felt a heat rise up my neck. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the folder at Sonia's perfectly highlighted hair. I wanted to grab Gabriel by his collar and ask him where his spine had gone. The betrayal tasted like copper in my mouth. They were stealing my legacy and handing me a check like I was the cleaning lady. You're firing me? I stated. We're retiring you? Sonia corrected. It's for the best. Really? The company has outgrown you. I reached for the pen. My hand was shaking, just slightly. I was about to refuse. I was about to tell them they couldn't run this place without me. I knew where the bodies were buried. I knew the passwords. I knew which vendors needed to be paid by check and which ones by wire. I knew the compliance codes for the city. But then my eyes drifted past Sonia's shoulder to the wall calendar hanging near the door. It was open to October. Today was the 14th. My eyes locked on the date of tomorrow, October 15th. A cold calm washed over me, instantly extinguishing my anger. It was replaced by something else. Something quieter. Something dangerous. 2 weeks ago, I had brought in the mail just like I always did. Gabriel never touched the mail. He said it was grunt work. Sonia never touched it because she didn't want paper cuts. There had been a thick, white envelope from the Internal Revenue Service. I had opened it. I was the only one who ever opened the compliance letters. It was a notification of a field audit, not a simple mail-in check, but a full, in-person audit. The letter stated that 3 agents would be arriving at our offices on October 15th at 9 a.m. sharp to review the last 3 years of ledgers, specifically looking into the entertainment expenses that Sonia and Gabriel had been racking up on the company card. I had placed that letter in the urgent action folder on my desk, the desk they were currently kicking me out of. I had planned to brief them on it today. I had planned to spend the next week pulling the files, organizing the receipts, and explaining to the agents why my son had bought a boat on the company dime. I was going to fix it for them, just like I fixed everything else. But they didn't know, because they didn't do the grunt work. I looked at Sonia. She looked so smug, so victorious. She thought she had won. She thought the only thing I had to offer was old-fashioned labor. She had no idea that a freight train was scheduled to hit this building in less than 24 hours. If I told them now, I would have to stay. I would have to help them fight it. I would have to clean up their mess one last time. But if I signed this paper, if I was no longer an employee, then the audit wasn't my problem. It was the problem of the modern, fresh management. You're right, I said softly. Sonia blinked, surprised by my sudden surrender. I am. Yes, I lied, my voice steady and smooth. I am old. Maybe I am too slow for this new vision you have. A 28-year-old MBA will certainly know how to handle things better than I can. I opened the folder. I didn't even read the terms. I just needed to be legally gone before 9 a.m. tomorrow. Mom, are you sure? Gabriel asked, a flicker of guilt finally crossing his face. We don't want you to be mad. I'm not mad, Gabriel, I said, and I meant it. I wasn't mad anymore. I was anticipating. I'm just moving on. Like you said, I signed my name on the dotted line. Renee Denham. With a flourish, I closed the folder and slid it back to Sonia. She snatched it up like a greedy child, probably afraid I would change my mind. We'll need your keys, Sonia said, her voice brisk again. And your access badge. I reached into my purse. I pulled out the heavy brass key ring, the keys to the front door, the warehouse, and the filing cabinets where the tax records were kept. I laid them on the table. Everything is in order, I said, standing up and smoothing out my skirt. I think you'll find that the business is exactly where it deserves to be. We'll walk you out, Gabriel offered, standing up. No need, I said firmly. I know the way. I built the hallway, remember? I walked to the door. I paused with my hand on the knob, looking back at them one last time. They were already looking at each other, whispering, probably celebrating their victory. They had cut off the dead weight. They had absolutely no clue that they were standing on a trapdoor, and I had just unlatched the safety. "Good luck with the new direction," I said. "I hope you're ready for everything tomorrow brings." "We are," Sonia chirped, dismissive. "We can handle anything." I smiled, a genuine smile. "I'm sure you can," I whispered. I walked out of the conference room, past my office, and out the front door into the bright afternoon sun. I didn't look back. I got into my car, checked the time, and turned on the radio. I felt lighter than I had in 20 years. I didn't have to prepare for the audit. I didn't have to hide their mistakes. I was retired, and tomorrow morning, the IRS was going to teach my son and his wife a very expensive lesson about the value of old-fashioned attention to detail. The heavy metal door clicked shut behind me, a sound of finality that echoed in the empty parking lot. I stood there for a moment, blinking against the harsh afternoon sunlight. In my arms, I held a cardboard box, a simple, beat-up copy paper box that Sonia had retrieved from the supply closet. It was terrifyingly light. 15 years of blood, sweat, and sleepless nights, and it all fit into a box that weighed less than 10 pounds. Inside, there wasn't much. A framed photo of my late husband, a ceramic mug that said, "World's Best Grandma," from a time before Gabriel stopped bringing the kids to see me, a staple remover I liked because it didn't jam, and my favorite sweater. That was it. That was the sum total of my existence at G&S Hardware. According to them, I started walking toward my car, parked in the spot furthest from the entrance. I always parked far away to leave the prime spots for customers. That was the kind of thing I did. That was the kind of thing Sonia called irrelevant. As my heels clicked against the asphalt, the ghosts of the past 15 years began to rise up from the pavement to meet me. I looked at the loading dock to my left. I remembered the night in 2012 when the delivery truck broke down in a snowstorm. Gabriel was fast asleep in his warm bed. I was out here at 2 a.m., freezing in my coat, helping the driver unload pallets of drywall by hand because we couldn't afford to lose the inventory. My back ached for a week. I never told Gabriel. I didn't want him to worry about the gritty details. I kept walking. I passed the side window of what used to be my office. I remembered the summer of 2015. We were almost bankrupt. The bank had called the loan. I sat in that office for 3 days straight, surviving on stale coffee and crackers, renegotiating every single debt we had. I sold my jewelry, my mother's emerald ring, to make payroll that month. When I finally secured the bridge loan, I came home and cooked Gabriel a steak dinner to celebrate our success. He never knew about the ring. He never knew we were hours away from locking the doors forever. Why did I hide it from him? The question hit me hard, heavier than the box in my arms. I thought I was being a good mother. I thought I was protecting him. I wanted him to be the successful businessman, the confident owner. So I took all the hard, ugly, scary parts of entrepreneurship, the tax audits, the angry vendors, the compliance nightmares, and I hid them away. I handled them in the dark so he could shine in the light. And what was the result? I had created a man-child who thought running a business was just about shaking hands and choosing logos. I had made him weak. By shielding him from the fire, I had ensured he would burn the moment he touched a hot stove. And Sonia, she was just the gasoline. I reached my car, a sensible 4-door sedan that was 5 years old. Gabriel drove a brand new leased luxury SUV, expense to the company, of course. I set the box down on the hood of my car and leaned against the warm metal. A wave of grief washed over me, but it wasn't for the job. I wasn't grieving the title of operations manager. I was grieving the erasure of my identity. For a decade and a half, this building was my third child. I nurtured it. I cleaned up its messes. I watched it grow. Sonia wanted to turn it into a corporate machine. She talked about algorithms and automated customer service. She didn't understand that Mrs. Higgins comes in every Tuesday not just for light bulbs, but because she's lonely and wants to chat about her cats. She didn't understand that the contractors buy from us because I ask about their kids by name. Sonia saw numbers. I saw people. And now she was going to scrub away the human touch that made us profitable. They wanted to erase me. They wanted to pretend that the success of GNS Hardware was due to their fresh vision and modern branding, and that I was just an old relic holding them back. The unfairness of it choked me. It was a physical pain in my chest. To be discarded by the very people you lifted up is a specific kind of heartbreak that only a mother knows. It's the feeling of having your own love weaponized against you. I looked back at the building one last time. Through the glass front doors, I could see movement in the lobby, probably Sonia measuring the walls for new art, or Gabriel high-fiving the sales staff, oblivious to the storm heading his way. I took a deep breath, inhaling the smell of exhaust and dry leaves. You didn't just fire your mother, I whispered to the empty parking lot. You fired your shield. I opened the back door of my car and placed the box on the seat. I didn't treat it like a coffin. I treated it like what it was, baggage I no longer had to carry. I got into the driver's seat and shut the door. The silence inside the car was instantaneous and comforting. I gripped the steering wheel, waiting for the tears to come. I expected to sob. I expected to break down, to feel the crushing weight of rejection. But the tears didn't come. Instead, I felt a strange twitch at the corner of my mouth. My eyes glanced at the digital clock on the dashboard. It was 2:45 p.m. In less than 19 hours, Special Agent Miller from the IRS, a man I had spoken to on the phone, once a man who sounded like he didn't have a sense of humor, would be walking through those glass doors. He would ask for the petty cash logs. He would ask why the company vehicle was used for a trip to Disney World. He would ask to see the 1099 forms for the consultants Sonia hired, who happened to be her cousins. And for the first time in 15 years, I wouldn't be there to explain it away. I wouldn't be there to pull a frantic correction file from my bottom drawer. I wouldn't be there to charm the agent or offer coffee while I frantically fixed a spreadsheet in the back. Gabriel and Sonia wanted to be the bosses? Fine. Tomorrow morning, they would get the full, unfiltered experience of being in charge. A smile formed on my face. It wasn't a warm, maternal smile. It was cold. It was sharp. It was the smile of a woman who knows the bridge is out, but watches the car speed up anyway because the driver refused to listen to the warning signs. I started the engine. The radio hummed to life, playing an old song I hadn't heard in years. I didn't look in the rearview mirror as I pulled out of the parking spot. I didn't need to see the building again. It wasn't my problem anymore. I drove toward the exit, my tires crunching on the gravel I had paid to have laid down 3 years ago. As I turned onto the main road, merging into traffic, the heavy weight in my chest vanished completely. They wanted me gone. They got their wish. I was gone. And I took the silence with me. For the first time in 15 years, I didn't wake up to the sound of a jarring alarm clock. My eyes opened naturally at 7:30 a.m. The sun was already streaming through the sheer curtains, casting a warm, lazy light across my quilt. Usually by this time, I would have been up for 2 hours. I would have already showered, dressed in my stiff blazer, gulped down a lukewarm cup of instant coffee, and been halfway through the morning traffic on I-480. My stomach would usually be in a knot, worrying about whether the delivery truck had arrived or if Gabriel had remembered to sign the payroll checks before he left for his networking golf game. But today, there was no knot. My stomach felt calm. The house was silent. I stretched my legs, feeling the luxury of the mattress. It felt illicit, almost like I was playing hooky from school. But I wasn't playing hooky. I was retired. Forced retirement, yes, but I was going to lean into it. I got out of bed and put on my robe, the soft, plush one, not the rushed, practical one. I walked to the kitchen and did something I hadn't done on a weekday since Gabriel was in elementary school. I made a pot of French press coffee. I ground the beans, slowly smelling the rich aroma, and waited for the water to boil. There was no rush. No one was waiting for me to unlock the front door. I took my steaming mug out to the back porch and sat in the wicker rocking chair. The morning air was crisp, typical for October in Ohio. I wrapped my hands around the mug and watched a cardinal land on the Boyd feeder. I looked at the watch on my wrist. It was 8:45 a.m. I took a sip of coffee and closed my eyes, letting my mind travel 5 miles down the road to the GNS hardware building. I didn't need to be there to see exactly what was happening. I knew the rhythm of that place better than I knew the rhythm of my own heart. Right now, Sonia would be marching through the front door, her heels clacking loudly on the linoleum. She would be holding her Veni latte, expecting the lights to be on and the store to be humming. She would stop at the reception desk, looking for the daily briefing sheet I always prepared, the one that listed the appointments, the cash flow status, and the urgent vendor calls. It wouldn't be there. Gabriel would be strolling in behind her, probably texting. He would head straight for the break room, expecting a fresh pot of coffee to be waiting. It wouldn't be there. I smiled against the rim of my mug. The minor inconveniences were starting, but they were nothing compared to what was coming in 15 minutes. I checked my watch again. 8:50 a.m. The agents from the IRS are punctual people. They don't arrive late, and they certainly don't arrive early. They arrive exactly when the letter says they will. I thought about the letter sitting in the bottom drawer of my old desk. I wondered if Sonia had found it yet. Probably not. She never opened the bottom drawer. She said it was cluttered. Most people don't understand what a field audit actually is. They think it's just sending in some receipts or explaining a math error on a tax return. That's a correspondence audit. That's easy. A field audit is different. A field audit is invasive. It means the IRS has seen something in your filing that triggered a massive red flag. In our case, the discrepancy between our reported income and the lavish business expenses Sonia insisted on writing off. When a field agent comes to your business, they don't just want to see paper. They want to interview you. They want to tour the facility. They want to see the inventory. They want to trace a single dollar from the moment it enters the cash register to the moment it leaves the bank account. They call it the audit trail. And that was where Gabriel and Sonia were about to walk into a wall. Because I was the trail. For years, Sonia had complained that my filing system was archaic. She hated the color-coded physical folders and the specific way I named the digital files. She wanted everything on the cloud, accessible by an app on her phone. But I kept it my way for a reason: security and accuracy. The digital files, the ones containing the detailed ledgers, the vendor 1099s, and the payroll breakdowns, were all on the local server. And they were all password protected. Not just one password. I had set up a tiered access system last year after our server was almost hacked to access the 2022 financials, the exact year the IRS was coming to inspect. You needed the administrator key. I was the administrator. Gabriel didn't know the password. He never bothered to learn it because he wasn't a computer guy. Sonia didn't know it because she refused to attend the security training meeting, claiming she had a lunch date. I imagine the scene. It was 8:55 a.m. now. By now, they would be realizing I wasn't just gone. They would be realizing the office was locked down. They might be trying to get into my computer to print the quarterly summary Sonia liked to look at. They would be seeing the access denied screen blinking in red letters. But the real panic wouldn't set in for another 5 minutes. I watched the second hand on my watch sweep past the 12. 9 a.m. Showtime. Right now, a nondescript sedan would be pulling into the parking lot. 3 people, 2 men and a woman, if they stuck to the standard team, would be getting out. They would be wearing business suits, carrying briefcases that looked heavy because they were full of the authority of the United States government. They would walk up to the glass doors. They would see the open sign. They would walk up to the front counter where the new 28-year-old operations manager, if he had even started yet, would be standing, looking confused. "Good morning," the lead agent would say. "We are here for the scheduled audit of GNS hardware. We are looking for Renee Denham or the current owner." I took a long, slow sip of my coffee. It was the best cup I had ever tasted. I could picture the blood draining from Gabriel's face. I could see the fake smile dropping off Sonia's lips. "Scheduled." Gabriel would stammer. "What do you mean scheduled?" We sent a notification letter on October 1st. The agent would reply, pulling a copy from his briefcase. It was confirmed received. Gabriel would look at Sonia. Sonia would look at Gabriel. And then, inevitably, they would both look at the empty chair in my office. They would realize, in a terrifying rush of clarity, that they had fired the only person who knew the agents were coming. They had fired the only person who could explain why there were 2 sets of books for the inventory. They had fired the only person who knew where the missing receipts for the warehouse renovation were actually filed, under C for capital improvements, not R for renovations, a system I tried to explain to Sonia a dozen times. Without me, they were naked, they were exposed. I set my mug down on the patio table. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the oak tree in my yard. It was so quiet here, so peaceful. I knew my phone was going to ring. I knew it in my bones. It wouldn't be right away. First, they would try to bluff. Then they would try to stall. Then they would try to find the files themselves. But around 10 o'clock or 10:30, panic would overtake pride. They would realize they were drowning, and they would remember that I was the only life raft they had ever known. I leaned back in the rocking chair and closed my eyes, letting the sun warm my face. I wasn't going to call them. I wasn't going to warn them. I was going to sit here, drink my coffee, and let the silence do the work for me. They wanted a fresh start. They just got one. Let's see how they liked the heat. By 10 a.m., the silence in my house had shifted from peaceful to heavy with anticipation. I had finished my coffee on the porch and moved inside to tidy up the kitchen, wiping down counters that were already clean. It was busy work. I was trying to keep my hands moving, so I wouldn't stare at the phone sitting on the island. I knew exactly what was happening 5 miles away. The initial pleasantries with the IRS agents would be over. The tour of the warehouse would be finished. Now they would be sitting in the conference room, the same room where I was fired less than 24 hours ago, and the lead agent would be asking the hard questions. They would be asking for the substantiation documents. They would be asking for the digital logs. At 10:15 a.m., I decided to prune the African violets on the windowsill. Snip, snip, snip. I focused on the dead leaves, treating them with more care than my own family had treated me. Then, at 10:30 a.m. exactly, the silence shattered. My cell phone began to buzz and ring against the granite countertop. The screen lit up, displaying a picture of Gabriel from his college graduation, smiling, hopeful, and not yet married to Sonia. I stared at the phone for 3 full rings. My heart did a traitorous little stutter. That was my son. The instinct to pick up, to soothe him, to fix whatever was wrong, was burned into my DNA. For 30 years, His ringtone was my call to action. But then I remembered the blue folder. I remembered the smirk on Sonia's face when she said I was too emotional. I picked up the phone. I didn't rush. I swiped the green button and brought the device to my ear. "Hello," I said, my voice calm and measured. "Mom, thank God." Gabriel's voice was a jagged wreck. He was breathless, practically hyperventilating. I could hear the background noise, the shuffle of papers, the hum of office machinery, and a low, tense murmuring that sounded like people arguing. "Mom, you have to help me. Right now." "Gabriel, slow down," I said, leaning my hip against the counter. "What's wrong?" "I'm in the middle of some gardening." "Gardening?" "Mom, the IRS is here." He shrieked the acronym, his voice cracking. "3 of them. They're in the conference room, with Sonia. They said they sent a letter 2 weeks ago. Why didn't you tell us? They're tearing the place apart." "A letter?" I asked, injecting just the right amount of mild surprise into my tone. I recall seeing a compliance notice come in earlier this month. I put it in the urgent file. "Did you not check the urgent file before you reorganized the office yesterday?" We didn't look in the files. We were busy with the transition." Gabriel stammered. "Look, it doesn't matter. They're here now. They're asking for the 2022 general ledger and the detailed payroll breakdown for the contractors. The agent, Miller, I think his name is, he's saying if we don't produce the digital records in the next 20 minutes, he's going to expand the scope of the audit to 5 years and freeze our accounts." "That sounds serious, Gabriel," I said. "Agent Miller is a very stickler for protocol." "I know. I can't get in." Gabriel was shouting now, panic overtaking him completely. I tried to open the financials_2022 folder on the server, and it's locked. It's asking for an administrator key. I tried password 123. I tried your birthday. I tried everything. "What is it? What's the code?" I closed my eyes and let out a soft sigh. Of course, he didn't know the code. I had implemented the 128-bit encryption specifically because Sonia kept leaving her laptop open in the break room. "The code," I repeated slowly. "Yes, I secured those files to protect the company data. It's a complex alphanumeric sequence." "Okay, great, just tell it to me." Gabriel urged. "I have the keyboard right here. Hurry, Mom. Miller is staring at me through the glass." I paused. This was it. The moment of choice. "Gabriel," I said gently, "I can't do that." "What?" He sounded like I had just spoken a foreign language. "What do you mean you can't? Just say the letters." "I'm not an employee of GNS Hardware anymore." I reminded him. "I signed a severance agreement yesterday. That agreement, which Sonia drafted, by the way, specifically states that upon termination, I am to surrender all access, keys, and control of company property. That includes intellectual property and security credentials." "Mom, don't be crazy," Gabriel snapped, his fear turning into anger. "This isn't a game. This is the business. If they freeze the accounts, we can't pay the vendors next week. We'll bounce checks. We could go under." "I understand the risks," I said. "I understood them for 15 years. That's why I handled the audits myself." Suddenly, there was a scuffling sound on the other end of the line. The phone was snatched away from Gabriel. "Renee!" Sonia's voice pierced my ear, shrill and vibrating with rage. She wasn't asking, she was demanding. "Stop this passive-aggressive nonsense immediately. We don't have time for your little pity party. Give me the passwords. Now." Her tone hardened my resolve like concrete. She wasn't scared. She was entitled. She truly believed that even after throwing me out, she owned my brain and my labor. "Hello, Sonia," I said, keeping my voice dangerously low. "It sounds chaotic over there." "It is chaotic because of you," she screamed. I could hear the desperation beneath the anger. "You hid this audit. You sabotaged us. I will sue you. I will drag you to court for corporate sabotage if you don't give me that password in the next 10 seconds. You want to sue me? I asked, looking at my fingernails. You're welcome to try, but I think your lawyers will be a bit busy dealing with the federal government. And as for sabotage, I didn't delete anything. The files are right there. You just don't know how to reach them because you fired the only person who did. Renee, please. Gabriel's voice came back, fainter, like he was leaning over Sonia's shoulder. Just help us this one time. We'll talk about the partnership again. We can fix this. The partnership. The carrot they had dangled in front of me for a decade. Hearing him offer it now, as a bribe to save his own skin, was the final insult. No, Gabriel, I said firmly. We won't. Renee. Sonia barked. The password. Miller is walking over here. I'm sorry, Sonia, I said, my voice crisp and professional. But yesterday in that very room, you told me that I was too emotionally involved and that the business needed a fresh, modern direction. You said my methods were old-fashioned. So, she screeched. So, I continued, this is me stepping back. This is me letting you handle the business with your modern methods. I'm sure a 28-year-old MBA can figure out how to crack a 128-bit encryption key. It's a young person's game now, isn't it? You vindictive old. Sonia started. I have to go now. I cut her off. I have a lot of gardening to do. Good luck with Agent Miller. Tell him I said, hello. Mom. Wait. Don't. Gabriel shouted. I pulled the phone away from my ear and pressed the red end call button. The silence rushed back into the kitchen, instantaneous and absolute. My hand was trembling slightly, but not from fear. It was the adrenaline of finally standing up. I stared at the phone, half expecting it to ring again. It did, almost immediately. I reached out and pressed the power button on the side of the phone, holding it down until the screen went black. I placed the phone face down on the counter. I took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of the African violets and the coffee grounds. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying since Gabriel was born. I wasn't his shield anymore. I wasn't his fixer. I was just Renee, and Renee had a garden to tend to. It took exactly 3 weeks for the walls to come down. For me, those 3 weeks were the quietest of my life. I didn't turn my phone back on for the first 3 days. When I finally did, there were 14 voicemails from Gabriel and 6 from Sonia. I didn't listen to a single one. I simply pressed delete all. If it was a genuine emergency, like a hospital visit, the police would have come to my door. Anything else was just noise I no longer had the bandwidth to process. I settled into a routine that felt strange, but wonderful. I woke up when I wanted. I read books I had bought 5 years ago and never opened. I actually cooked dinner instead of heating up a microwave meal at 8:30 p.m. after locking up the store. But in a small town like ours, you don't need a cell phone to know when a local business is imploding. You just need to go to the grocery store on a Tuesday morning. I was in the produce aisle, inspecting a bag of gala apples, when I heard a familiar voice behind me. Renee, is that you? I turned around to see Mary, the shift supervisor, who had worked the front counter at GNS Hardware for 7 years. Mary was a good woman, reliable and honest. But today, she wasn't wearing her blue company polo. She was wearing jeans and a sweatshirt, and she looked exhausted. Hello, Mary, I said, putting the apples in my cart. You're not at the store today? Mary let out a dry, humorless laugh. Nobody is at the store today. Renee, didn't you hear? The doors are locked. They sent us all home yesterday afternoon. I felt a pang of sympathy for her, but I kept my face neutral. I haven't heard anything. I've been retired. Mary looked around to make sure no one was listening, then stepped closer, leaning over her shopping cart. She was bursting to tell someone, and who better than the woman who used to run the ship? It's a disaster, Renee. A complete disaster. She whispered. After you left, that IRS audit didn't just go away. Those agents, they camped out in the conference room for 5 straight days. 5 days. Usually they're gone in an afternoon, right? If your books are clean, yes, I said. Well, ours weren't. Mary shook her head. Apparently, without you there to explain things, Gabriel and Sonia couldn't answer a single question. Agent Miller asked for the substantiation on the travel expenses for the last 2 years. You know, that marketing retreat they took to Cabo San Lucas. I nodded. I remembered it well. I had told them specifically that they couldn't write that off as a business expense because there was no business purpose. I had categorized it as a personal owner draw, meaning they had to pay taxes on that money. They tried to tell the IRS it was a legitimate client acquisition trip. Mary said, her eyes wide. But they didn't have a single receipt for a client meeting. Not one. Miller found out they stayed at an adults-only resort for 7 days. He flagged it as tax fraud. Fraud is a strong word. I murmured, though I knew it was the right one. That wasn't even the worst part. Mary continued, her voice dropping lower. Because Gabriel couldn't get into the password-protected files for almost 48 hours, the agents thought they were stalling to destroy evidence. By the time they finally paid an IT guy $3,000 to crack your encryption, the agents were already angry. They decided to expand the scope. Expand it to what? I asked. Everything, Mary said grimly. They went back 5 years. They looked at the payroll. They looked at the inventory depreciation. And they found the consultants. I stiffened. I had always suspected Sonia was funneling money to her family, but I never had proof because she handled those checks personally from the operating account, bypassing my ledger until the end of the month. Sonia had been paying her sister $2,000 a month as a social media strategist. Mary revealed. The IRS checked. Her sister doesn't have a business license. She doesn't even have a website. It was just ghost income. They slapped GNS with a massive penalty for unreported wages and misclassification. So the fines are heavy? I asked. Heavy? Mary scoffed. Renee, they froze the accounts. The bank locked the operating account on Friday because of the federal lien. That means our paychecks bounced. That's why we're all at home. We can't work if we aren't getting paid. I looked down at my apples. I had built that operating account from zero. I had nurtured it so that 20 families could eat every week. In less than a month, they had drained it and locked it up. And Gabriel? I asked, how is he handling it? Mary grimaced. That's the other thing. The power couple is done. The screaming matches. Renee, it was embarrassing. Everyone in the showroom could hear them. Sonia was screaming that Gabriel was incompetent, that he didn't know how to run his own business. She called him a mama's boy right in front of the customers. And Gabriel? He finally snapped back. Mary said, he told her it was her fault for firing you. He said they never should have listened to her fresh direction nonsense. He's been sleeping in the office on the leather couch because she locked him out of the house. Or, well, she tried to. I heard the leasing company is coming to repossess that fancy SUV of his tomorrow. I listened to the laundry list of destruction, the frozen assets, the fines, the bounced checks, the marriage crumbling under the weight of accountability. It should have been tragic. A mother should feel sad that her son's life was falling apart. But I didn't feel sad. I felt a strange, cold sense of validation. They had called me obsolete. They had called me slow. But the truth was, I wasn't slow, I was thorough. I was the glue. I was the one who swept the floors and checked the locks and made sure the foundation was solid so they could play executive in the penthouse. They had removed the foundation to make the building look modern, and now they were shocked that the roof had caved in on their heads. "I'm sorry, Mary," I said sincerely. "You and the other staff didn't deserve this. You should file for unemployment immediately. Don't wait for them to fix it. They can't fix it." "I already filed this morning," Mary sighed. "We all did. It's a sinking ship, Renee, and the captain is crying in the bathroom while the first mate screams at the ocean." She reached out and squeezed my arm. "We miss you, you know. The store, it felt safe when you were there. We knew we'd get paid. We knew things worked. It's just chaos now." "I know," I said. "It was good seeing you, Mary." She pushed her cart toward the dairy aisle, leaving me standing there with my apples. I walked to the checkout line. The cashier scanned my items: apples, bread, tea, a nice bottle of wine. I slid my debit card into the reader. It beeped. Approved. I had money in the bank. I had a paid-off house. I had my dignity. Gabriel and Sonia had the fresh direction they wanted. They had the chaos they created. I walked out to my car, loading my groceries into the trunk. I thought about Gabriel sleeping on that office couch, the same couch he had bought for $3,000 to impress a client, probably wondering how the IRS found the Cabo trip. He was learning the hardest lesson of adulthood. You can inherit a business, but you cannot inherit competence. You have to earn that. And as I drove home to my quiet, paid-for house, I knew that the collapse wasn't over yet. The silence from the store was deafening, but the noise in their lives was just beginning. I turned up the radio and hummed along. I had a lot of reading to catch up on. Retirement is a funny concept. Society tells you that when you hit 65 or when you get pushed out of your job, you're supposed to just stop. You're supposed to sit in a recliner, watch daytime television, and wait for the twilight to fade into night. They expect you to become invisible. For the first week after I left G&S Hardware, I tried to do exactly that. I read 3 novels. I reorganized the pantry twice. I pruned every bush in the garden until they looked like military haircuts. But by the second week, I felt an itch under my skin. It wasn't anxiety. It was wasted energy. I realized something sitting at my kitchen table with a perfectly balanced checkbook. I wasn't tired. I was just unemployed. My brain was still sharp. My ability to spot a decimal error from a mile away hadn't disappeared just because Sonia took my keys. I didn't miss the drama, and I certainly didn't miss the ungratefulness of my son, but I missed the work. I missed the satisfaction of bringing order to chaos. So, I did what I have always done. I got to work. I didn't rent a fancy office downtown. I didn't buy a billboard or hire a social media strategist like Sonia did. I simply cleared out the guest bedroom, moved my old oak desk in there, and bought a new laptop. I printed up 50 simple business cards on cardstock that read, Renee Denham, Small Business Administration and Bookkeeping. I started small. I went to the local bakery where I bought my sourdough bread. I knew the owner, Sarah, was struggling with her payroll taxes because she was a brilliant baker but a terrible accountant. I offered to help her sort out her quarterly filing for a flat fee. When I handed her the organized binder 3 days later, she looked at me like I was a magician. "Renee," she said, wiping flour off her cheek, "you just saved me 10 hours of crying in the back office." Word travels fast in a small business community. Sarah told the mechanic next door. The mechanic told the florist. Within 10 days, I had 5 clients. They weren't looking for modern branding or AI integration. They were looking for someone who answered the phone, knew the tax codes, and didn't make mistakes. They were hungry for competence. It was a Tuesday afternoon when the real validation came. I was sitting in the corner booth of the downtown diner, meeting with a potential new client, when the bell above the door chimed. In walked Frank Henderson. Frank was one of the biggest general contractors in the county. He had been G&S Hardware's largest account for 8 years. He bought all his lumber, drywall, and fixtures from us. He was a gruff, no-nonsense man who chewed on unlit cigars and hated excuses. He spotted me across the room. His face, usually set in a scowl, softened into a look of genuine relief. He marched right over to my booth, ignoring the "please wait to be seated" sign. "Renee Denham," he boomed, his voice carrying over the clatter of silverware. "I heard a rumor you were hiding out here." "Hello, Frank," I smiled, gesturing to the empty seat across from me. "I'm not hiding. I'm consulting. How are things at the job site?" Frank pulled out the chair and sat down heavily, looking like a man carrying the weight of the world. He took the unlit cigar out of his mouth and slammed his hand on the table. "The job site is fine. My supply chain is a disaster," he growled. "I just came from your old place. G&S. It's a ghost town, Renee. A ghost town." I took a sip of my iced tea. "Is that so?" I tried to pick up a special order for the custom windows on the Miller project. The one we talked about 2 months ago. Frank shook his head. They didn't have it. The kid at the counter, some new guy who looked like he'd never held a hammer, said the order was never placed. Can you believe that? A $50,000 order, never placed. I could believe it. Special orders required a 50% deposit and a specific vendor code entry. Sonia probably thought the computer did it automatically. I asked to speak to Gabriel. Frank continued, his face reddening. They said he was unavailable. I asked to speak to Sonia. They said she was in a meeting. I walked back to the warehouse myself to find the invoice, and the place was a wreck. Pallets everywhere, inventory mislabeled. It looked like a bomb went off. "I'm sorry to hear that, Frank," I said. "Building a reputation takes years. Losing it takes days." Frank leaned in closer, lowering his voice. "Renee, I pulled my account. I told them right then and there. I'm done. I can't build houses if I don't have materials. But here's the thing. I don't just need lumber. I need someone to handle the invoicing for my subcontractors. My current bookkeeper is retiring, and hearing what happened to G&S, it scared me." He looked me in the eye, and the gruffness faded. "The place fell apart without you, Renee. We all knew it. We all knew who really ran the show. Gabriel was the face, sure. But you were the spine. You were the one who made sure the gears turned." I felt a lump form in my throat. For 15 years, I had told myself that my work mattered, even when Gabriel rolled his eyes at my spreadsheets. But to hear it from Frank, a man who ran a multi-million-dollar company, was different. It was the external proof I hadn't realized I needed. We all knew who ran the show. I wasn't invisible. I wasn't obsolete. "I'm actually taking on new clients for administrative consulting," I said, sliding one of my simple business cards across the table. "I can handle your subcontractor invoicing. I can organize your vendor payments. I can make sure you never miss a tax deadline." Frank picked up the card like it was made of gold. He didn't ask about my fresh vision. He didn't ask if I knew how to use TikTok. "When can you start?" he asked. "I have an opening tomorrow morning," I said. "Bring me your shoebox of receipts, Frank. Let's get you sorted." He shook my hand, and his grip was firm. "You're a lifesaver, Renee. And tell Gabriel, well, never mind. I think the empty parking lot is telling him enough." Frank left the diner, and I sat there for a moment looking at the empty chair. I had walked into this diner as a retired woman looking for a hobby. I was walking out with one of the biggest contracts in the county. I packed up my laptop and paid my bill. As I walked to my car, my phone dinged. It was a deposit notification from Sarah the baker. She had paid her invoice instantly. I got into my car and checked the rearview mirror. I looked different. The lines on my face were still there, but the heaviness around my eyes was gone. I looked capable. I looked dangerous in the best possible way. GNS hardware was crumbling because they thought they could replace competence with image. They thought the old way was the problem. But Frank was right. I was the spine. And now that I was standing on my own, I was standing taller than ever. I drove home to my guest bedroom office. I had work to do, and for the first time in a long time, every dollar I earned, every problem I solved, and every thank you I received belonged 100% to me. It was a Tuesday afternoon, gray and drizzly, the kind of Ohio weather that seeps into your bones if you let it. I was sitting at my desk in the guest bedroom, finishing up the quarterly reconciliation for Frank Henderson. My new office was quiet, warm, and smelled faintly of lemon polish. I had just clicked send on the invoice when I heard a car door slam in the driveway. I wasn't expecting anyone. My clients usually emailed, and the mail carrier had already come and gone. I stood up and walked to the front window, peeling back the sheer curtain just an inch. Standing on my front porch, shaking the rain off a coat that looked like it hadn't been dry cleaned in a month, was Gabriel. I hadn't seen my son in face-to-face since the day I walked out of the conference room. I had seen his picture on my phone when he called in a panic, and I had heard the stories from Mary and Frank, but seeing him in the flesh was different. He looked 10 years older. His shoulders, usually squared back with unearned confidence, were slumped forward. His hair, typically gelled and styled, was thinning and messy. He looked like a man who hadn't slept through the night in weeks. My heart did that motherly lurch, that instinctive urge to run out, wrap him in a blanket, and feed him soup. But I stayed put. I reminded myself of the blue folder. I reminded myself of the fresh direction. He knocked. It wasn't the assertive knock of a CEO. It was a hesitant, desperate tapping. I walked to the door and opened it. "Hi, Mom," Gabriel said. His voice was raspy. He looked at me, then looked past me into the warm house, as if hoping I would invite him back into the womb. "Hello, Gabriel," I said, keeping the screen door latched for a moment. "You're wet." "Can I come in?" he asked. "Please. I need to talk to you. It's important." I unlatched the door and stepped back. He walked in, dripping water onto my hardwood floors. He didn't apologize for the mess. He just stood there, looking around at my new life, as if he couldn't believe I continued to exist without him. "I'll put the kettle on," I said. "Go sit in the living room." I went to the kitchen. My hands were steady as I filled the kettle. I arranged a tray, 2 cups, the good sugar bowl, and a few biscuits. It was the hospitality he had been raised with, even if he didn't deserve it right now. When I carried the tray into the living room, Gabriel was sitting on the edge of the sofa, his head in his hands. He looked up when I set the tray down. "Sonia moved out," he blurted out. No preamble. "No, how are you, Mom?" Just straight to his own misery. "I heard," I said, pouring the tea. "Milk, no sugar. Just how you like it." He took the cup, his hands trembling slightly. "She went to stay with her sister. The one the IRS is investigating. She blames me for everything, Mom. She says I didn't protect her from the audit. She committed tax fraud." "Gabriel," I said gently, sitting in my armchair opposite him, "you can't protect someone from the consequences of their own greed." He flinched. I know we messed up. That's why I'm here." He took a large gulp of the hot tea, burning his tongue, but he didn't seem to care. He set the cup down and leaned forward, his eyes pleading. "Mom, it's bad. It's worse than Mary probably told you. The fines, they're over $150,000. And that's just the initial assessment. Miller is threatening criminal charges for the ghost payroll. The bank won't unfreeze the operating account until we show a remediation plan. I nodded, sipping my tea. That sounds accurate. Federal tax liens are very serious. We can't pay the vendors, Gabriel continued, his voice rising in panic. Frank left. The electrical supplier is threatening to sue. We have inventory rotting on the shelves because we can't ship it. The business is bleeding out. He took a breath, and then he said the words I knew were coming. I need you to come back. I didn't blink. I didn't smile. I just watched him. I'm not asking for a partnership, he added quickly, misinterpreting my silence. I know things got messy with the severance, but we need you. Miller likes you. He asked where you were. If you come back, just for a few months, you can talk to him. You can organize the remediation plan. You can fix the books. You can call Frank and get him back. You want me to fix it, I stated flatly. Yes, you're the only one who knows how. Gabriel pleaded. Mom, please. I'll pay you whatever you want. I'll fire the new operations guy. He's useless anyway. Just come back and steady the ship. Then, he played his final card, the one he thought was an ace. Do you really want to see the family legacy destroyed? He asked, his voice dropping to a whisper. Grandpa started this hardware store in a garage. You and Dad built it up. Do you want to watch it die because of a rough patch? Don't you care about the legacy? I set my teacup down on the saucer with a soft clink. I looked at my son. I looked at the dark circles under his eyes, the desperation in his posture, and I realized something profound. He didn't miss me. He didn't miss his mother. He didn't miss our morning coffees. He didn't miss my advice or my company. He missed my labor. He missed the safety net. He missed the feeling of being able to screw up and having me magically make it disappear. He was drowning, and he didn't want a hug. He wanted a life preserver. He wanted me to come back into the burning building he had lit on fire and carry him out on my back. And he had the audacity to call it legacy. Gabriel, I said softly. He perked up, thinking I was about to agree. Yeah, Mom. No. The word hung in the air, heavy and absolute. His face crumbled. What? Mom, did you hear me? We're going to lose everything. I heard you, I said, and the answer is no. But why? He looked genuinely confused, like a child who has been told Santa Claus isn't coming. You love that store. You gave 15 years to it. I did. I agreed. I gave 15 years. I gave my savings. I gave my nights and weekends. And in return, you and your wife sat me down at a table, told me I was old and slow, and handed me a cardboard box. I said I was sorry. Gabriel protested. Sonia made me do it. You are a 40-year-old man. Gabriel, I said, my voice hardening. Sonia didn't hold a gun to your head. You chose her modern vision over my loyalty. You wanted to be the big man in charge. Well, you are in charge now. I stood up. I walked over to the window and looked out at the rain. And as for the legacy, I said, turning back to him, you are confused about what that word means. The legacy wasn't the building. It wasn't the logo or the inventory. The legacy was integrity. It was treating people right. It was paying your taxes and knowing your customers' names. I looked him dead in the eye. That legacy didn't die because of a rough patch. It ended the day you decided that greed was more important than family. You killed the legacy, Gabriel, not me. I'm just the one who refused to be buried with it. Gabriel sat there, his mouth open, stunned silence filling the room. He had expected me to yell, maybe, or to cry. He hadn't expected me to simply state the truth with such calm finality. I have my own clients now, I said, signaling that the conversation was over. I have work to do, and I don't clean up other people's messes anymore. He stood up slowly. He looked small. He looked like the little boy who used to break a vase and try to hide the pieces under the rug. Only now he realized the rug was gone. "So you're just going to let us fail?" he whispered. "I'm going to let you experience the consequences of your actions." I corrected him. "That's not cruelty, Gabriel. That's parenting. I should have done it years ago." He walked to the door. He paused, his hand on the knob, waiting for me to change my mind. Waiting for me to crack. "Goodbye, Gabriel," I said. He opened the door and walked out into the rain. I locked the deadbolt behind him. I went back to the living room and picked up the tray. I carried the cups to the kitchen, rinsed them, and put them in the dishwasher. My hands were shaking just a little. It hurts to close the door on your own child. It goes against every instinct in your body. But as I looked around my quiet, peaceful kitchen, I knew I had done the right thing. He wanted a savior, but I was done saving him. I was busy saving myself. It has been 6 months since that rainy afternoon when I closed the door on my son. Spring has arrived in Ohio. The gray skies have turned into a brilliant, crisp blue, and the African violets on my windowsill, the ones I was pruning the day Gabriel called in a panic, are in full bloom. They are thriving. And so am I. I drove past the old building yesterday. I hadn't gone down that road in months, but I had a meeting with a new client, a lovely young woman who runs a flower shop and needs help setting up her payroll. Her shop is just a few blocks past GNS Hardware, or rather, what used to be GNS Hardware. The sign is gone. The big, bold letters that Gabriel had spent $10,000 redesigning were taken down weeks ago. Now, a for lease banner hangs crookedly in the window. The parking lot, once full of contractors' trucks and bustling with energy, was empty except for a few swirling dry leaves. I pulled my car over for a moment and just looked at it. You would think I would feel sad. After all, I spent 15 years of my life inside those walls. I knew every creak in the floorboards and every flickering fluorescent light. But looking at the empty shell of the building, I didn't feel sadness. I felt a profound sense of closure. The collapse happened exactly as everyone predicted. The IRS fines were too heavy. The bank refused to extend their line of credit. Without inventory, they couldn't sell. Without sales, they couldn't pay the fines. It was a death spiral, accelerated by the fact that the two people at the helm spent more time fighting each other than fighting for the business. I heard from Mary that Gabriel is working in sales now for a siding company in the next town over. He's back to being an employee. He clocks in, he does his work, and he clocks out. I think, in a way, it's better for him. He was never meant to carry the weight of ownership. I forced that dream on him just as much as he grabbed for it. Now he has a boss to tell him what to do, and I suspect he sleeps better at night. Sonia is gone. She moved back to Chicago. I don't know the details, and honestly, I don't care to know. She is a chapter in a book I have finished reading. I put my car in drive and continued on to my meeting. My consulting business, Denim Solutions, is fully booked. I have a waiting list of 3 months. I choose who I work with. I only take clients who are respectful, honest, and pay on time. Frank Henderson is still my biggest fan. He tells everyone within earshot that I'm the best investment he ever made. But the success isn't what brings me peace. The money is nice, of course. I finally took that vacation to the coast I had been putting off for a decade. But the peace comes from something deeper. It comes from the realization that I don't have to fight to be valued anymore. For years, I thought that if I just worked harder, if I just saved them one more time, if I just proved my worth over and over again, they would finally respect me. I thought love was a transaction. I give you everything, and you give me gratitude. I was wrong. I've learned that you cannot make people appreciate you by doing everything for them. Sometimes the only way to show them your value is to remove it. People talk about revenge like it has to be loud. They think of dramatic scenes in movies where someone throws a drink in a face or slashes tires or leaks a scandal to the press. But true revenge, the kind that settles in your soul and heals you, is quiet. I didn't slash their tires. I didn't scream at them in public. I didn't steal their money. I simply stopped. I stopped catching the balls they dropped. I stopped fixing the mistakes they made. I stopped holding up the walls they were trying to tear down. I took my hands off the wheel and I let gravity do the rest. They called me obsolete. They called me emotional. They thought I was the past. But when the past walked out the door, it took the future with it. Now my days are my own. I wake up and tend to my garden, a real garden, not just a few pots. I'm growing tomatoes and peppers this year. I spend my afternoons with clients who say, "Thank you," and mean it. I have dinner with friends. I sleep soundly without a single worry about tax audits or missing invoices. I am alone in this big house. Yes, but I am not lonely. There is a difference. Loneliness is sitting in a room full of people who don't see you. Solitude is sitting in a quiet room and enjoying your own company. I parked my car at the flower shop and checked my reflection in the mirror. I adjusted my glasses. I looked happy. I thought about the women out there, women like me, who are currently holding up the sky for people who never look up to say thanks. Women who are afraid to step back because they worry everything will fall apart. My advice: let it fall. You might be surprised to find that when the dust settles, you are the only one left standing, taller and stronger than before. I grabbed my laptop bag, stepped out into the sunshine, and walked into the flower shop to help a young woman build her dream. My own dream, it turned out, was just beginning. Did you like the story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story.